Hi, welcome to the next episode of Futurecast. This is the first episode that we're doing this year, and I'm changing a little bit of the focus that we have talked about. I believe that there are things that markets, startups, and companies don't solve. And there are other entities that have done a fantastic job of taking those challenges on and working with them. So we are going to start the series with our guest today, Ingibjörg. Welcome to the Futurecast. Can you give a small introduction about what you are working on, what you represent, and about the organization?
So my name is Ingibjörg Magnúsdóttir, and I'm the fundraising director of the Icelandic National Committee, UNICEF. Been with the organization for about 6 going on 7 years now. Actually started as a volunteer there and just kind of fell in love with their mission and work that they do. The UNICEF mission is basically that every single child thrives and prospects, and to maximize the opportunities that children have in the world. Right. We're present in 119 countries. We have different types of offices. There are country offices and there are national committees. Just to explain a bit the context of what we do here in Iceland. So the national committees, like we have here, our main job is to raise funds so that the projects of UNICEF all around the world can work. Or get funded, yeah. Yeah, and get funded. And the country offices, there we have our experts on ground that program the programs for UNICEF.
What made you want to volunteer for the UNICEF?
So I was doing a master's degree in anthropology, and I had been living in Spain for about 8 years, working with the Spanish government actually, in the court system and as an assistant for prosecutors there in international cases. And I traveled so much around the world when I was a child. And I saw so much injustice in the world, and just the distribution of wealth wasn't distributed as I thought was fair. So when I was doing my master's degree here in Iceland, there was this course where we could volunteer, and I chose UNICEF.
Oh, okay.
They needed a translator at the time.
Right.
And since I had experience as a translator in Spain, I was translating reports from Spanish into Icelandic for them. I just kind of fell in love with their transparency, honesty, and I never realized how much impact UNICEF had until I started to work there as a volunteer. I had been like a pledge donor for many years before that, doing like monthly donations. And then when I started working there as a volunteer, I could see the impact like all around the world. And I thought it was fascinating that us here in Iceland could have so much impact. Right. And we actually have like the world record per capita for pledge donors. Oh, wonderful. About 10%. Oh, wow. Of the Icelandic nation are pledge donors for UNICEF. And that's amazing. It's like 27,000 people here in Iceland that just are investing in children's future all around the world.
I know globally, as you say, in 190 countries, the opportunities are not equal to all kids. And I can say that even me coming from India, in India, it's not the same. There are lots of challenges in terms of distributing opportunities. So give me some examples of some of the projects that you've been exposed to.
I think the closest one to us right now is how UNICEF reacted when the Ukraine war broke out last year. Right. What happened was that UNICEF had already been in Ukraine before the war broke out, mostly on the east side because there was conflict there already. And we were mostly focusing on mental health support for children in that area. When the war broke out, within 72 hours, we had delivered tons and tons of supplies already on ground in Ukraine. We also put up blue dots centers. We put them on the border all around the country, basically where the mainstream of people is going through. This is a place where you think people are escaping their country because there's war, and when they cross the border, they think sometimes they should be safer.
Right.
But this is actually a place where children get kidnapped,
right.
Into human trafficking rings, and this is a very dangerous place. So the blue dots are very important to identify children, to unify families, and a place where people can just relax a bit, have a hot meal, warm meal, sleep, shower, get information that they need for their next step, and then continue. And just seeing this firsthand just shows the impact and how UNICEF is able to react so quickly because they are already on ground.
Right.
Then seeing how it kind of, in my head, is kind of like a net, then it's like spreads out into all of the neighboring countries and activates their governments to, okay, so you're receiving a mass amount of people. What are you going to do? What happens next?
So if I understand this blue dot concept correctly, it is setting up an infrastructure in, say, let's say from Ukraine, somebody's traveling into Poland.
Exactly.
Having like a safe space where it is administered and run by the UNICEF, so the refugees or displaced people can just go there if they have kids to make sure that they can be received.
And not just if they have kids.
Yeah.
And nobody crosses the border there unless they get registered. And that way, for example, if a child is alone, you pick that up immediately and work on reuniting that with their families.
Okay.
And so this is a safe place.
You work with the local authority, like the Polish side of the UNICEF will work with the government, and then the Ukraine side will work with the government.
Everybody needs to work together on ground.
Absolutely.
And UNICEF does that so well because to be able to do real impact and have real results, we have to work all together. We can't do it by ourselves.
I wanted to chat a little bit about obviously I talk about startups, and this year, Startup Iceland, you plan to have a booth. And I have my own side of why, but I wanted to ask from your side, what prompted you all to reach out to me and say, hey, maybe we should talk.
Yeah, there are endless possibilities, right? And we see an opportunity for startups to start early, giving back to the community. Just like also kind of a moral standard, starting from the beginning, giving back. Of course, I know that startups, they don't have a lot of funding, and they're striving as well to get funds to start their amazing ideas and companies. But you can start anywhere. Right. With a small donation, and when you get big, make it even bigger. Right. And I think it's good also to know the organization that you're supporting, to be familiar with their mission, their statement, knowing the people that work there, and just having an experience of how it works, the reporting, and being really involved in what you invest in, because I see it as an investment, really, and you want to know where the money goes, right? Right.
I can add to that. What I immediately resonated to was not just the fact you wanted to reach out, the fact that I work with founders, and a lot of the conversations that we have behind the scene, all of them are working on some really hard problems and building something big. And you kind of realize when you start digging a little bit deeper with the founders, they all want to kind of do what the organizations like the UNICEF and the Rotary and the Lions Club, they all do, but they never get exposure to what these organizations do. And I thought Startup Iceland would be a great way to show them what these organizations do and get them exposed. First is, they all want to save, they want to build a better future. That's what startups are about. It's about building a different future. And they don't have to wait for becoming like Bill Gates to actually start working on the problems around them. What I have always seen is that when some of these founders start putting their mind into anything, they can create tremendous value because they are problem solvers, and that's what startup is. And if they can start engaging with UNICEF, they see some of the context for problems globally, then they could potentially even pivot their startup to focus on those things. Not that it's going to solve what UNICEF does, but it could be an addendum to what UNICEF does or what the Rotary does. So for me, founders and entrepreneurs are leaders. And if you can get the leaders to focus on all the right things at the early stage, then it gives them context to go and work on these problems. Sometimes it's about money, other times it's about their own time. Third, it's about their own network, because they get to meet a lot of people along the way. You never know, one person that they meet when they travel to meet their investors, their customers, they might be able to open that door to UNICEF to go and work on something that they would probably not do. So that's the whole context for me to say, yes, let's do this and reach out. So let's talk a little bit more in the next coming years. So what are the big challenges that you are facing in terms of UNICEF and your mission here?
My mission here in Iceland.
In Iceland. I mean, obviously, you're heading that effort, and you say there are a bunch of people who are contributors to this. So what's the next big challenge? Because in Iceland we always do well per capita. So what can we do better?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest challenge / opportunity is to getting more companies and startups involved. Because we know that, and in a long-term investment, because UNICEF, of course, we work on long-term projects. I mean, we're on ground in the 190 countries, not only reacting to emergencies.
Yes.
We're building a better future there.
Right.
And we're just prepared to respond for an emergency when that happens. But we have long-term plans, and we need long-term investors with us in this. So what is really important for UNICEF right now is we need to raise more regular resources, which is flexible funding for UNICEF. This means basically that our experts on ground, they know exactly where the funding needs to go. They know how to prioritize because they are experts. That being said, a lot of people and companies that are donating a lot of donations to UNICEF, they want to choose, for example, a country or a specific region, and that's, of course, as well.
Their priority, yeah.
Yeah, and that's fantastic as well. But I think our biggest challenge is to raise more flexible funding, because we do see that UNICEF cannot be a program-based organization. We need to trust our experts on ground to evaluate the situation.
Right. Yeah. So UNICEF is part of the United Nations, if I remember my childhood learning on this.
Yeah.
So from the United Nations itself, what is the contributions that countries do, and how much, like percentage-wise, you don't have to talk about the numbers, in terms of, does the United Nations pool, because all countries actually contribute resources into the United Nations, and then it gets into all of these different, like the WHO, UNICEF, UNESCO, the various different organizations. Are you funded like 50-50, or is it 70-30? What is the percentage that comes from donors versus something that comes from governments?
100% from donors.
From donors, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yes, governments do give grants to UNICEF. But it's the donors,
right?
And mostly the monthly donations that make everything work, because that's the long-term investment that we're talking about.
What is the lowest amount somebody can start?
The lowest?
Yeah, monthly contribution.
I would like the lowest is like 3,000 kroner.
Okay. Okay.
And yeah, so we have that and scaling up as well. Right. And we have different types of like subscriptions programs as well, like for people and companies. We're actually starting a subscription program for small and medium companies, right? Because that's different than for an individual. So that's something that we're starting up as well.
Right. I mean, in other countries like in the U.S. and in India, there are some tax exemption or tax reimbursement for matching, like when we raise money in the US, at least when I was working there, the companies would match. Let's say that you contributed 5,000 kronas, the company would match 5,000 kronas because for them it is tax exempted contribution. And as long as their employees are doing something that are, you know, in the alignment with what they're aligned with, they usually support and match. In Iceland, there is nothing like that. You know, I don't know if there is. Is there anything like that?
Yes, there is. And right now, I don't recall the percentage, but for companies, it's a reduction about, I think it's 1.85% of like the total revenue of the year.
Okay.
And also, it's quite new for individuals as well.
Okay.
That now, for example, in your tax form, it started last year actually. Then you get a deduction of the maximum, I think, is 300,000 kronor per year.
Okay.
And it comes automatically in your tax form every year. So everything that you donate as an individual shows up there, which is quite nice as well, because I think a lot of people, everybody wants to do good and they donate to a lot of things, and there they can see the totality and also get a discount of it, which is great. And companies do get this as well. I think it's 1.85%.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's again a new learning for me. So now we will start incorporating some of that into some of these activities. Anyway, I mean, I know we will have a booth in Startup Iceland. I'm looking forward to having you there. This year we're going to talk about artificial intelligence and all of that. And you know, so these are very hot topics today. Yeah. But I want to talk a little bit about Iceland and. You know, is UNICEF doing any projects in Iceland other than just collecting founders and donors?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we are.
What projects are you doing in Iceland?
Well, we have an advocacy team inside our office here. Okay. And so they do amazing work. They've been introducing the children's rights conventions into communities, into schools, and raising awareness of the right of every single child. Which is so important for children and adults to know their rights. So that's what they've been doing here in Iceland, because we face different challenges here. Right. So we focus on children's involvement as well. We involve them as much as we can in the work that we do here. For example, we were designing a product with the Moomins, if you know the
Finnish.
The Finnish cartoons. Right. And we involved children all along the way. We because they are the experts, and if we're designing something for them, we involve them and give them a voice. Right. So that's what we do here. We stand guard for the rights of children here in Iceland, and try to inform them about their rights. And mostly that nobody can ever take away their rights. And also for adults to be informed as well. Right. I also wanted to chat a little bit about children literacy and some of the challenges about things we've been reading in Iceland about kids struggling to read. Is there any program or project you're doing in that side? I know you're doing advocacy and also children's rights, but I also think that one of the big challenges we have is in the reading and the literacy side. Yes, we actually just finished designing with the Moomin characters in Finland a subscription program for children. Oh, wonderful. Which will help them with literacy. We do this through pretend play, basically, because through pretend play, children, they use words in different ways. They want to understand them better, and that can ignite a spark for reading. So in this project, basically, it's from the book Moomin Madness, and there's a floating theater in that story. So around that theater, we actually send wooden theater in the beginning of this journey, and each month children they get a postcard, and there's a story card for them to read with their parents, and an activity card connected to that story card, which was designed by Ævar Vísindamaður, the children's books writer, and also the UNICEF ambassador here in Iceland. So that's something that we just actually finished designing, in collaboration with the Mumins and an artistic group here in Iceland called Thekjo. And this is something that is just starting and will be really fun to see how it works out. But yeah, we were focusing on literacy and just kind of igniting that spark and
to read
and for children to use their imagination, creativity. So we did workshop with children when we were doing this project, and what we saw when we were thinking about the assignments that they would get, the less structured assignment they got, the better, because they are amazing. They are creators. They have imagination that we adults, some have, some don't. So we just have like a spark, like in the assignment, and then it's just their world.
How do you engage with them? Is it through the school system, or how do you, get in front of them? Yeah.
For example, we have a lot of schools that have they have the work by the Children's Rights Convention, and so we work with a lot of schools, and we reach out, of course, and see who's interested in participating in things like this. And so we reach out that way, basically.
So I'll share a little bit of information from the other side, the venture side. One of the worst investment categories is education technology. From an investor point of view, because education technology just does not get into schools because nobody wants to pay. The schools don't have any money to pay, parents don't want to pay, kids don't know how to pay. So venture investors basically say, EdTech, thank you very much, we don't want to touch it, right? But I've invested in a couple of education technology things, and as I tell the founders who are working on it, startups are supposed to be hard. It's not supposed to be easy. This is how you have to solve this problem. One of the challenges of getting education into different ways, and I think the world has been changing, as we are here. How do we get educational institutions to kind of work more with organizations? But like, for example, you are talking about children's rights, and I don't think schools talk a lot about that. And because I have two daughters who've grown up in the Icelandic school system, not that they're bad or anything of that sort. It's just that it's not part of the daily conversation or curriculum. So how do you engage?
Yeah, that's something that the advocacy team is working really hard on. And by introducing the Children's Rights Convention into the schools, they have to listen to children.
So is that like an event that happens every year?
No, that's an ongoing process and evaluation as well. So it's introducing it is a lot of work. Schools have to go through a lot of evaluations and then regular checkups, just to see that everything is going as it should. So,
where can I find out which schools have done it, which schools have not done it?
You can find it on our webpage on unicef.is. You can see the schools that have introduced it already. And there are so many schools actually that are in the process as well, which is fantastic. Because we do, the educational system in Iceland is good in many ways, but can be improved in so many ways as well. So I think we can only do this together and listening to children that are in the schools.
With that, I say, Ingibjörg, thank you again. Thanks for the great work you're doing. Very, very happy to have you be the first guest for this year with the Startup Iceland Futurecast episode, and hopefully we'll do more to bring more awareness on things that startups and markets don't solve, and continue with your work, and hopefully having your booth in Startup Iceland, you get to meet more founders, and I'm going to challenge them on stage to step out of their own world and actually extend and do more. So with that, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.